Well, good evening and welcome to our Bond 2021 virtual presentation tonight. I'm Dr. Jeannie Stone, your superintendent, and at this time I'd like to introduce you to Teresa Ordonez, who will give some information about translation.
Thank you, Dr. Stone. Buenas tardes a todos. En la parte de abajo de la pantalla, en el menú, aparece un mundito que dice interpretación. Presione ahí y le dará la opción de inglés o español. Para escuchar la versión en español, presionamos español. Después le pide apagar el audio original. Si usted tiene alguna pregunta, con mucho gusto podemos contestarlas dentro de preguntas y respuestas. Gracias por acompañarnos. Mi nombre es Teresa Ordóñez y estaré proporcionando la interpretación en español. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Teresa. And we are so glad to have you here tonight so that we can share information with everyone about Bond 2021. On the screen, you see your host for this evening who will be joining us. All of us are here to answer questions and to share information. You do have a Q&A feature that's available to you as well as a chat box, and we hope that you'll use the Q&A to be sure to answer any questions that we can answer for you. On the screen, you see the faces of those joining us, and I'd like to start out with, we have two of our school board members who are here. We have our school board president, Ms. Karen Clardy, and we have our school board member, Mr. Eric Eager as well. I'd love if we could, Ms. Clardy, I know that you always love to just say hello to our viewers.
I do. Thank you, Dr. Stone. I'm so glad we've got a good turnout going, and I'm excited to share the bonds. The board's selection of the bond items that are going forth to you this year. I can't, in the 30 years that I've been involved with RSD, I don't think I've seen a better bond, a bond that is looking towards the future. It's very strategic, and the community has participated for the past 5 years in bringing this bond to our community. So thank you for being here, and be sure and put your questions in the box because every single question will be answered before the end of the night. Thank you, Dr. Stone.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Clardy and Mr. Eric Eager, and for everyone who's here. Also on the screen, you see several who are going to be here, as I said, to help with the answering of questions. We have our Deputy Superintendent, give a wave to Tabitha Branham. We have our CFO, Mr. David Pate, our Chief Financial Officer. We have our Chief of Strategy and Engagement, Dr. Melissa Heller, and you're going to hear more from Ms. Sandra Hayes, our Assistant Superintendent for District Operations. So we are thankful for Brian Pruitt and Ryan Woods, who are also here with all of the behind the scenes technology, and we're grateful for all of their assistance. So let's get started. We want to open up tonight with a brief video that we'd love to show this video because it is narrated by two of our outstanding Richardson ISD students. They're going to talk to you first about Bond 2016 and the wrap up of all of the projects included in that bond project. And then we're also going to hear about Bond 2021. So let's go ahead and start our video, and then we're going to have some more information and some good Q&A.
Richardson Independent School District operates on a 5-year bond cycle for capital expenditures. Bonds are a resource available to school districts to furnish and equip school buildings and programs. Voters must approve bond packages as a financing tool for capital construction projects and other items or equipment with a useful life of more than 1 year. In 2016, Richardson voters approved a $437 million bond package. Bond 2016 provided the funds for capital maintenance, such as repairing and replacing roofs, floors, playground equipment, and HVAC systems. Bond 2016 also provided one-to-one computer devices for all students and teachers, technology equipment, safety and security equipment, and additional career and technology instructional materials. Thanks to RSD voters, Bond 2016 accommodated student growth by constructing 24 classrooms at Lake Highlands High School, 21 classrooms at Richardson High School, and 6 new classrooms at Mark Twain Elementary, Northwood Hills Elementary, and Yale Elementary. Renovations took place at Aiken Elementary, Big Springs Elementary, Yale Elementary, Prestonwood Elementary, and White Rock Elementary. Passage of Bond 2016 took RISD's largest underutilized classrooms, libraries, and transformed them into adaptable, flexible, and collaborative learning environments at both the elementary and secondary levels. Multi-purpose activity centers, one at each high school, allow students in fine arts and 17 varsity sports to practice, rehearse, strength, and condition in a safe, secure, covered, versatile, and ventilated environment. No more missed practices due to bad weather or another student group occupying the court, field, or stage. Planning is critical to ensure that current and future RISD students have the resources they need. In preparation for Bond 2021, a 50-member Bond Steering Committee analyzed facility assessments, enrollment projections, financial and other data relevant in creating and maintaining learning environments that align with the district's mission, vision, and goals. The Bond Steering Committee represented a diverse cross-section of RISD taxpayers, community leaders, parents, business owners, and senior citizens, all with the goal of putting together a community-driven bond package that will provide resources for every school across the district. And the committee developed a recommendation that would not increase the current property tax rate. After meeting throughout the fall of 2020, the committee provided facility, equipment, and infrastructure recommendations to the Board of Trustees on January 11, 2021.
This is something that we spent months going over and over and over to make sure that the recommendation that we're providing tonight is representative of all members of that committee.
The bond package totals $750 million and consists of 2 propositions. Proposition A for $694 million is for capital construction, infrastructure, repairs, buses, safety and security, and equipment. Proposition B is for $56 million for student and staff technology devices. $694 million is proposed for school construction, including more classroom space to accommodate enrollment growth, renovations of older buildings in poor condition, and projects to address physical safety issues at 2 schools. Categories and examples of anticipated projects include $286 million for infrastructure and safety. This includes items such as roofing, HVAC, flooring, maintenance, furniture, security, and school buses. $269 million for construction and renovation. This includes phase 1 of our middle school transformation. Plans include rebuilding Lake Highlands Junior High and renovating Forest Meadow Junior High. Anticipated projects in the construction and renovation category are additions for growth at Mohawk Elementary, Brentfield Elementary, and Pierce High School, the final of 4 high school renovations. Anticipated renovations for student safety are planned at Brentfield Elementary and Hamilton Park Pace Center Magnet. Anticipated renovations to address facility condition are planned for Northridge Elementary and Stouts Road Elementary schools. $139 million would go to the teaching and student support category. Examples of projects include instructional materials, digital teaching applications, digital network equipment, and enterprise applications. Career and technical education would receive instructional and curriculum materials. Fine arts would receive instruments, equipment, and uniforms. Athletics would also receive uniforms. Proposition B totals $56 million and includes computer devices such as Chromebooks, iPads, and laptops for students, teachers, and staff. Bond 2021 would lay the groundwork for the district to transform junior high schools into true middle schools by moving 6th grade out of elementary campuses and into schools housing grades 6, 7, and 8. More than 95% of Texas school districts already utilize this middle school model, and the change will provide RISD 6th graders additional academic and co-curricular opportunities. It will also free up space in elementary schools, opening the path for full implementation of RISD's Pre-K for All initiative. The Lake Highlands Learning Community would be the first to transition to the new middle school model. Due to the facility condition assessment, Lake Highlands Junior High would be rebuilt. Forest Meadow Junior High would be renovated, transforming both campuses into RISD's first middle schools. Proposed by the Bond Steering Committee, Bond 2021 would be the first phase of a long-range facilities vision that would extend to the 2026 bond to complete middle school transformations across all of RISD's attendance areas. RISD's facilities condition assessment has helped prioritize which of RISD's aging campuses could be renovated first. Did you know that the average age of RISD's school buildings is almost 53 years old? Most of RISD's schools were built between 1952 and 1980. Long-range renovation and replacement efforts could extend through the 2036 bond.
Bond 2021 would also provide equipment for RISD schools, departments, and programs. Some items, like security cameras and defibrillators, have a direct impact of safety, while other items, such as instructional materials, science lab upgrades, and athletic uniforms, have a direct impact on the academic and extracurricular courses that students take. Due to new legislation, certain projects, like technology devices, must be separated into different propositions on the ballot. Proposition A for $694 million is for capital construction, infrastructure, repairs, and equipment. The second proposition for $56 million is for student and staff technology devices. Due to a new state law, every bond proposition in Texas must include the following statement on the ballot even when there is no tax rate increase as a result of passage of the bond. Under state law, this statement must appear on the ballot. Bond 2021 would touch every campus, all without an increase to the district property tax rate. Because of its excellent track record of financial management, RISD maintained an underlying AAA rating from Moody's Investors Service and a AA+ rating from Standard & Poor's. Only a few other Texas school districts have this combination of high underlying bond ratings, allowing RISD a very favorable interest rate on bond sales while lowering the costs of issuance. Please visit the Bond 2021 website at www.risd.org/bond2021.
The website has more information about all the categories, projects by school, answers to frequently asked questions, and voting information.
Please join me in voting on May 1st. So a big shout out to those two exemplary students representing all of our students in Richardson ISD. And at this time, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Sandra Hayes. Again, she is our Assistant Superintendent for District Operations, and she is in charge and oversees all of our facilities.
Thank you, Dr. Stone. I'm going to share my screen and bring up some slides that we just want to go over quickly and kind of reiterate what you've heard so that everything is clear. So to start out with, just want to reiterate that this was at a minimum a 16-month planning process that we did to put this bond together. We had a bond steering committee, as you heard, and their recommendation to our board in January was for $750 million. So on February 8th, our board of trustees voted to place two bond propositions on the ballot for May 1st. As you can see on the screen, again, Proposition A, $694 million, and Proposition B, $56 million. Our bond steering committee had 50 members self-nominated, and they included parents. All of our businesses were represented, community leaders, residents in Richardson, those that had kids and those that don't. So we had a nice variety of folks on that committee. And we began meeting formally in the fall, put in lots of hours, going through lots of data. Our bond steering committee had a charge that was given to them by our board of trustees. The board of trustees wanted to make sure that this committee understood how important it was and the work that they needed to do and to have the parameters set for them. So our board put together this charge and these parameters for this committee as they met. And you can see the bulleted list there of the things that they kept in front of them as we went through. Lots of data was presented to this committee, considering all of our students across the district and their needs, making sure all of our school communities were covered, making fiscally sound recommendations, and addressing all of other aspects of the district as we went through. One of the things that Dr. Stone emphasizes, and we emphasize when we're talking to folks, is just the age of our facilities. Our ages, if you average all of our buildings together, the average is 53 years. And so a lot of our campuses have had some renovations, but not renovations to our classrooms and areas that impact our students daily. So one of the areas that we asked our bond steering committee to really concentrate on was the critical need to look at the facilities and the systems that are working and not working, and really consider those in creating this long-range plan that the district now has for all of our elementary schools. And then the second piece was for the middle school transformation that we are starting. That's a 10-year plan that came from our strategic plan, and we asked the committee to really look at that and understand what that impact would be for our district. Our ISD continues to grow. We are predicted to continue to have additional students each year coming into our district. We're very fortunate that our neighborhoods are regenerating, lots of families moving in. So we continue to watch and accommodate for that growth at our campuses. The most important thing here, making sure our students and their instructional needs are met. That's the purpose of having our school. And so we ask them to keep that area up front, and also then in the lens of equity and what that looks like across the district for all of our facilities. This is a visual that Dr. Stone put together for the committee, and it was really their driving visual. On the left are all of the inputs that we gave the committee to consider. We had lots of homework for the committee to do, lots of research and analysis. We looked at our prior bonds. If you've been in Richardson ISD for a long time, you know that part of our financial model is to have a bond referendum every 5 years. And so we looked at what those bond referendums have been over the years for the committee. We had a strategic plan put in place a couple of years ago. And so we looked at all of the action items from that strategic plan. We looked at the facility condition index that we had done and all of the systems on all of our campuses. We looked at our capacity study, demographers report for the campuses where we knew we had growth based on that capacity and demographer study. We put together program planning committees of community members and staff to help us plan what those campuses needed. Each of our departments shared their needs with the bond steering committee. Our board goals were front and center on what our board anticipates taking place over the next 5 years. And then we did a community survey back in November to ask the community their thoughts on the next bond referendum. So all of those inputs were given to our bond steering committee. You can see in the middle the lens that we asked them to keep, and the most important words on there are in blue across the top and bottom, the student learning experience, always keeping our students at the forefront of all of our data decisions. So all that information was put together, and the bond steering committee went to the board in January with a recommendation. Our board in February voted to call the election, and then we're asking the community to vote May 1st. So on that big proposition, Proposition A, we kind of broke it down into 3 buckets of money. We have the, sorry, my computer just got a bleep, sorry, my apologies. We have the construction and renovation, the teaching and student support, and then we have the safety and infrastructure. And so we'll take a look at those, each one individually. The most important thing on this screen to look at the very bottom, every campus will be impacted with this bond proposal. So we're very intentional to make sure that every campus is touched with some type of the fund in the bond, and then also every student, regardless of the age of the student or the activity that they're in. So the first one, for this one, we really looked at enhancing our camera programs. We have cameras at all of our campuses. We need to enhance the coverage of those. And obviously those cameras are at end of life in some areas, so we need to replace those. We're going to put a vape detection system in our secondary campuses and the restrooms. We want to make sure our AEDs and other health equipment are maintained and up to date. The things that you don't see a lot of, but that are very important for the aging infrastructure of our buildings, our roofs. We have a lot of roofing that needs to be accomplished. A lot of our HVAC systems, a lot of the ventilation areas we need to really concentrate on, repairing our floors and replacing where we need to. Transportation was brought in-house to our district 3 years ago. So our bus fleet is being put on a cycle so that we can maintain a bus fleet that's 10 years old or younger for safety. And then we keep our maintenance and security vehicles on a cycle as well. And then furniture for our classrooms. As we said, we've done minimal amounts of renovations over the years in our classrooms. So we want to make sure that we make those learning environments welcoming and available to our students and teachers that really help to address the way instruction is delivered now compared to how it was when a lot of our buildings were built. So a lot of office furniture and classroom furniture, cafeteria furniture, and equipment are all part of this big bucket. The next bucket is for our renovation and construction. These are projects that we've been planning with the campuses to make sure that we catch all of their needs. The first big piece is the middle school transformation. We'll talk a little more in depth about that in a moment, but that, to start out with, the first phase of that is to rebuild Lake Highlands Junior High. It had the worst facility condition index of our campuses. The majority of the systems at that building need to be repaired or replaced. So it's much more cost effective for us to actually rebuild that campus than to try to go in and do all the necessary repairs. At the same time, we're going to be renovating Forest Meadow Junior High, so the Lake Highlands Learning Community can be the first one to actually move to the middle school model. We identified growth across our district. We have 4 high schools. Pierce High School is the last high school to receive a renovation. Pierce needs additional classrooms. They have about 27 teachers that float daily around the campus, so we need additional classroom space. We're going to put in a cafeteria that holds their campus, makes it more universal in the middle of the campus. And then in their auditorium, they have some deficiencies that we need to correct in this renovation as well. We also have neighborhoods that are continuing to grow in Mohawk and Brentfield, so those also need additional classrooms. At Brentfield, there are actually 2 buildings on that site and they are not connected. So for student safety, we're going to be connecting those 2 campuses, putting a cafeteria in the middle of that campus big enough for their student body and giving them additional classrooms, and then the safety piece of that connection. Same thing at Hamilton Park Pace Center Magnet. When it was built, it has a wonderful auditorium, but it is not connected to the campus. So we want to make that connection for Hamilton Park so students can go back and forth as part of their magnet program there. They use that auditorium frequently, and we want to make sure that is safe for our students and staff. And then as part of our 20-year long-range plan for elementary school learning environment makeovers, the first 2 elementary schools that we identified that had a lot of deficiencies in the learning environment for our students is Northridge Elementary and Stouts Road. So those learning environment upgrades would be painting, flooring, looking at windows where necessary, lighting, just to make it a more inviting feel and to give teachers and students space in those classrooms to be able to have the instructional needs met. So that's all part of the construction and renovation piece. This is a little bit more in depth into the middle school transformation timeline. Again, as a part of the strategic plan, it came out of 2 different committees, both the facility action team and also the teaching and learning team. And so for this middle school transformation model, it's going to be a 10-year model. So we know it's going to actually cover 2 bond cycles for RISD. For this first bond cycle 2021, again, we're going to build Lake Highlands Junior High, a new Lake Highlands Junior High on their existing site. And then we're going to renovate Forest Meadow. So in the school year 2024, sixth graders across the Lake Highlands area will move to the middle school model. And then for a bond 2026, we will finish out the middle school transformation by rebuilding Liberty, Park Hill, and Westwood, and then renovating Apollo North and West. So by the end of 2030, all of our sixth graders will be in a middle school model, and all 8 of our current junior highs will have been transformed and ready to go for another 30 to 50 years. One thing that came out of our strategic plan and tied into this sixth grade transformation is universal pre-K. We would like to expand pre-K across our district, and all of our elementary schools will need capacity to do that. So by moving our sixth graders out, we're able to provide that additional capacity across the district so that we can expand and have this universal pre-K for all of our students. Another part of Proposition A is the teaching and student support. Very important section here. This has all of their instructional materials, textbooks, digital teaching applications that we use regularly now. This is where our network equipment will be upgraded. All of our enterprise applications that we use to run the district on the business side as well as the instructional side. Our career and technical education classes, all of our specialty classes at our high school and junior highs are part of this. As well as our fine arts and athletics, where our instruments and equipment and uniforms are all on cycles. Again, as we've been doing bonds every 5 years, this allows our students to continue to get updated instruments and uniforms on a cycle. So that's all part of Proposition A. Just to reiterate Proposition B, this is a first for the district. There is a new legislation that requires all school districts now to put all technology devices into its own proposition. So Proposition B is for $56 million. This will cover the 7,000 staff and 39,000 plus student devices that we need for the next 5 years, as well as all the specialty equipment that goes into our high school classrooms, a lot of our arts and AV classrooms, CAD, specialty labs that we need, all require devices, and this is all part of this Proposition B. So the good news for our community is there is no change to the tax rate. Mr. Pate and his financial staff, as well as our financial consultants, determined that our district can carry the $750 million debt with no change to the tax rate. And you can see our tax rate listed there, our maintenance and operation tax, our interest and sinking fund tax rate, and then the total tax rate that we currently have. So again, no change to the tax rate with this bond referendum. This is a tax rate comparison just so that you can see other districts around that have tax rates similar to ours. We are one of only 3 districts that still offer the homestead exemption. So we always want to educate our community on that. This is a tax rate history for RISD. Again, RISD is known for being very fiscally conservative, for maintaining solid tax rates across the board. We were at that 30 cents for a long part of our district. We did have a TRE in 2018 where we were able to capture some additional funding and raise the tax rate. And then with House Bill 3 and the legislation, it was compressed in 2019. So that is our history. So this is one of the pieces that's new for all school districts, one of the things that we want to educate our community on. There is a new state law in Texas that says on the ballot, in all caps, as the last sentence, it will read, "This is a property tax increase." We want to educate our community, though, that for RISD, that will not be the case. We are able to do this bond referendum without increasing our property tax rate. So RISD is able to make all existing and future payments with the existing tax rate we have in place. So we just want our voters to know that that statement is legally required and it has to be on there regardless of the circumstance for the school district. Here's an example of what that bond language looks like. And again, the last sentence will be in all caps, and it will say this is a property tax increase. And all districts have to have that across the state, regardless of what the circumstances are. So here's some examples of that, just so that everybody understands. Under House Bill 3, for any amount, any bond issuance that we have, regardless of the amount, that statement has to be in the bond language. So if in the 3 examples there that are given, any bond issuance that lowers the tax rate, you would still see that sentence on the bond ballot language. If a bond issuance keeps the tax rate the same, like we did in 2011 and like we're doing in 2021, that statement still has to be in the bond language. And then if we were issuing a bond for a single dollar that would lower the tax rate, you would still see that sentence that says this is a tax rate increase. Again, that is part of the law. It has to be written just like that, again, regardless of what the circumstances are. So we're just educating our community, making sure everybody understands that for RISD, for bond 2021, there is no tax rate increase. How is RISD able to do that? Well, it's part of our financial budgeting philosophy. As I said, part of our financial model includes bond referendums every 5 years. Richardson aggressively structures and repays our bond debt. We do a lot of refunding where available so that we can get lower interest rates. We're fortunate that our interest rates are at historic lows right now. Mr. Pate and his team continue to look at revenue generated by the growth in property values. And we're able to maintain those high ratings with Moody's and Standard & Poor's. So that is just a little bit of education about our bond 2021. Election day is Saturday, May 1st. Early voting starts this coming Monday, April 19th. And so at this point, I believe we're going to start answering questions. So I'll turn it back over to Dr. Stone.
Okay, well, thank you. And thank you, Ms. Hayes, for that great information. Thank you to everyone for your great questions that are coming in. And at this time, I believe that I'm going to have some help from Dr. Heller or Mrs. Branham to help us to facilitate some of the questions and for us to be able to answer some of those.
Yes, I can begin. We have 9 questions that have been submitted in the Q&A, and I'm going to start. The first one is, given the current credit rating and indebtedness in RISD, what is the maximum amount RISD is eligible to borrow at this time? I think Mr. Pate is going to provide some information on that question.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm just looking for the question here. Did you get that off of the chat side or the question and answer side?
On the question and answer side.
Okay. Let's see here. Let me go back and find that, making sure I just cover everything. Well, I'll start, and if I don't get it, Melissa, catch me because I'm having trouble finding that question. The maximum amount that we can borrow, I guess technically we've not calculated that, because the maximum amount we could borrow would be at a 50-cent tax rate, because that's the largest tax rate the law allows us to have. So what we've done is, we can service the $750 million in debt at the existing 35-cent tax rate. And I think this will cover part of another question, but that determination was made based on very conservative property value growth calculations and conservative interest rate estimates. So we estimated, working with our financial advisors, Hilltop Securities, that the property value growth rate for tax year 21, which is the 21-22 fiscal year, that we would have 2.5% growth rate for tax year 21, and then 1% property value growth rate for every year thereafter. RISD has experienced average annual property value growth of 3.7% a year over the last 25 years. Now, we had years with larger growth than that, and we had years with substantial declines in property value year over year. But on average, it's been 3.7% a year for the last 25 years. And again, we were very conservative, used much lower values than that. And that is what most school districts do. And that's what we've done here in the past, is use conservative property value growth. And then we also used a higher than current interest rates in estimating the interest cost associated with the bond. So the $750 million based on our current estimates can be serviced at the 35-cent tax rate. What is next, Melissa?
Yeah, the next question is, when the steering committee put together the estimated costs for items in the bond issue, what is the percentage used for padding contingency factor for each item?
We use 10% as our escalation rate.
Thank you. Next question, after the bond issue passes, how many bids will be solicited for each line item on the bond issue? Is the winning bid determined only by cost?
Okay, so the number of bids for each line item depends on the various activities and items within those particular lines. So there will be multiple bids. There will be multiple bids as a result of the bonds. As to exactly how many for each particular thing, the construction of, for instance, a single campus would be let as one bid, but we would seek, we want as many vendors as possible to respond to every bid that we submit, every bid that we publish. Anyone interested in responding to any bid that Richardson ISD does, whether that bid is funded with bond money or that bid would be paid with general fund dollars or federal grant funds, can register on the district's purchasing department portion of the website, and you can receive notification of, every bid that we publish. You can choose every category there and get to see every RFQ, RFP, RFB that's sent out. See the next part of that. What was the next part of that? Let's see. Is the winning bid determined only by cost? No, there's numerous factors that we use in determining which bid, or how bids are awarded. State law requires that we consider purchase price, reputation of the vendor, and the vendor's goods or services. Let me get my notes over here. Quality of the vendor's goods or services, extent to which the goods or services meet the district's needs, vendor's past relationship with the district, the long-term cost to the district to acquire goods or services, and other relevant factors that we specifically list in the request for bid or request for proposal.
Thank you. The next question, each item in the bond issue has an estimated cost. If the actual cost is less than the estimated cost, does the excess go for unnamed projects, or is it used to reduce the debt service?
So that really waits until we get to the end of all of the projects and making sure that we have provided for everything. As you know, we're experiencing different rates of inflation in different parts of the bond proposals. Construction costs are higher than they have been lately. So we will just have to wait and see at the end of this as to which direction we would need to go with it. But the law requires that we only spend bond proceeds on the items approved in the bond referendum.
The next question is, the annual tax statement from RISD does not show any line items. For transparency, could RISD update the tax statement to show one line item for operational costs and another line item for debt service like other taxing entities do?
So I have not seen that information presented in other tax statements. If, I think Marcia, you sent this, if you could send me the name of a taxing entity that does that, I'll be glad to take a look at it. But certainly the district's budget and audited financial statements are available on the district's website, and they provide multiple lines of information regarding district spending.
The next question is about a video surfaced during the TRE campaign and shows the board discussing obvious needs being removed from MAC proposal to artificially decrease the price tag and make it more palatable to the voters. Further discussion ensues, and it is mentioned that the list of cuts was difficult for the average person to access without having to do a little research. Is this the level of transparency we can expect for bond 2021?
I'll take that question. I'm not familiar with any video that's being referenced in that question, but I can say that the voters and our constituents can have a high level of assurance that we have a transparent process. We're ensuring in a transparent process, and that is the reason why we are here and providing information. Our board and all of Richardson ISD administration is available to be transparent and answering any and all questions and providing the information so that everyone has the information that they need as they go out to cast their vote.
Next question is, how old was the bus that was repurposed for displaying the bond 2021 banner while parked? How can we believe there's a need for school buses when the district has enough of a surplus to repurpose them for mobile advertising? We will need to do some research on the specific age of that bus, and we can add it to our FAQ tomorrow afternoon on our district website. Next question, what if bond 2021 passed, but bond 2026 did not pass? What would occur then with the middle school transformation plan?
I think that's a really good question. And I think, Ms. Hayes, I think because you have the experience, would you give an overview as to why we go out for 5-year bond cycles? Let's start there.
Yeah, so started back in the 90s with our financial model, looking at what we needed to offer for our students and getting the really best bang for our buck. And so that was determined that bonds provided the lower interest rate and the ability to get the money that we needed for our capital projects. So for this middle school transformation, because we know it's going to take more than one bond cycle to get all 8 campuses where they need to be. Our board did pass a resolution that they want to continue that middle school after this bond. And so we are always looking for funding and ways that we can pay for the projects where necessary.
Yeah, and I think there's another question from Mr. Simpson about what would the plan be for middle school expansion if the bond 2026 did not pass. And I think that goes to your answer regarding how Richardson ISD, as well as all districts, fund large projects like this. The issuance of bonds and the ability to do large scale projects, build new schools, do the types of major renovations. That money comes from the bonds, the bond process. And so in the event that that subsequent bonds in the future didn't pass, then we would continue to work with our community to because this started out with our strategic plan, and so this was something that moved forward in terms of going forward because the community put into our strategic plan that we would transform our schools into middle schools. And so the way that we would pay for that would be through bonds. And so that would be the bond project would have to pass for us to continue for the entirety of the whole middle school transformation for Richardson ISD. Sandra, is there anything else that you'd add to that?
No, just that we're going to need to touch all of our facilities because of the age of all of them. So funding is going to have to become available to continue moving forward with our campuses.
Yeah. So I think the timeline then is a good question, because if a bond were to fail, then what would be the next step, either Mr. Pate or Ms. Hayes, to be able to have the money and the funds that would be necessary for the repairs and all of the things that are ongoing to maintain our facilities?
Well, bond funds would be our choice of funding types to do these kind of construction projects. So we would regroup and talk to our community and find out what part of the bond they liked or didn't like, and then potentially go for another bond referendum at the next available time.
Yeah, and I just think that's important for everybody to understand that that's how we fund these types of projects. So we would just have to regroup with our community and go out the next opportunity.
Okay, the next question, one-to-one technology was provided in the last bond at a cost of 19.6 million. This bond is asking for 56 million to do the same thing. Why is it 3 times more now?
I'll take that one. Thank you, Dr. Heller. So it's important to note that as Ms. Hayes shared in her presentation, new legislation requires us to separate out student devices. And as a part of that process, we basically included any type of device that is used in our schools. So that includes, really in our district, that includes central office devices, that includes student Chromebooks, that includes the iPads for our elementary, that includes our teacher devices, that includes all audio-visual equipment, that includes all of the equipment that's necessary for our computer labs and in our Cte program. So it's a far more extensive bucket of devices than just our one-to-one technology that was in that 19 million from Bond 2016.
Thank you, Ms. Branham. How much money has been spent by RISD on bond informational materials like signs, flyers, banners, mailers, et cetera? Where do these funds come from? We are going to get a total dollar amount, and we can provide that as an update on the bond information website. We have tried to leverage existing communications and all of our communication channels to share information, as well as do a lot of the printing in-house through our own print shop services. But we will add this information to our bond information website FAQ.
I also want to say something about that, because we try to leverage as many of our opportunities that don't have a cost, such as these types of forums where we can come on and speak to our community members virtually like this. Obviously, this doesn't cost us anything. But one of the things that we continually hear is there are a lot of our constituents that rely on things to show up in their mailbox. Such as many of our retired community that maybe don't have access or just don't get on to these types of virtual formats. And so that's why we have increased the mailers and things that go home at the request of our community members who have asked us to do so. I think that that's important. But in terms of the cost, we'll look to the budget and make sure that we're being transparent and putting that out there, because it is a good question.
And I can't answer the where did these funds come from portion. These dollars all came out of the general fund.
And Dr. Stone, can you just also go over just a little bit about why we do this? Aren't we legally bound to inform our community that that we are bringing a bond to them to vote on? Isn't it our responsibility to inform, correct?
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things that is part of the responsibility. And we are expected to get information out there to increase not only information, but voter turnout. We want there to be an informed electorate that's going out there to the polls. And so it is part of our responsibility under the law to make sure that we are getting information out there.
Thank you. The next question, what is the timeline for potential renovations at Northridge and Stouts Road Elementary?
Yeah, so we have not developed when that project will actually start. It will happen sometime during this 5-year cycle, but our process for doing renovations on campuses is to put together a program planning committee and have that committee tell us what's happening at those campuses and what works and what doesn't work. And so should we have funding come available, then we will put together those program planning committees, and then we will plan out those projects at both of those schools.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. The next question, what is Plan B for middle school expansion in the remaining feeder patterns not covered by Bond 2021, and should Bond 2026 not pass? And I think some of this was already touched on.
Right. I think we just answered that these projects are driven by bond funding. Can you provide information on the bidding process that is used to come up with the estimated cost for the construction projects? Do you request multiple bids from current vendors? Yes. So we do bids for all of our projects. As Mr. Pate described, we work with our purchasing department to go through all legal channels, and we want as many vendors as possible to bid on our construction projects. Both the architects bid and as do general contractors, and we look at all of those to determine the best value for the district.
So the other thing I can offer on that is, we seek, like I mentioned, the bonfire thing, that is anybody, that is not just vendors that are currently awarded. So, on some things, school districts will put together a pool of vendors for a period of time. On other things, they will bid, just that particular activity. So anybody that's interested, I cannot, encourage this enough. If you're interested in receiving notices of bids or know someone that's interested in receiving notices of bids, they can sign up on our website to find out about those.
Thank you, Mr. Pate. What is the current square footage per pupil at J.J. Pierce? How does that relate to other RSD high schools? And how much more square footage per pupil will Bond 2021 add to J.J. Pierce?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I have that document available out on the Pierce website. So I will pull that information and we can post it in the FAQs for this. So what we're working on for Pierce High School to match the other three is to have a capacity of 3,000 students. So I don't want to quote the wrong amount of square footage for Pierce. So I have several different projects in mind and I don't want to get them confused. So I'll pull that data for you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Would expansion at Mohawk and Brentfield be necessary if J.J. Pierce feeder pattern junior highs were expanded to include grades 6, 7, and 8?
Yes, they need capacity for the growth that is part of our demographer's report for younger grade levels at Brentfield and Mohawk.
And if I can just add, that additional capacity as well will just allow us to add additional pre-K opportunities for our community.
Thank you. Next question is, if we have to wait until the bond pass to begin the projects, why did the Board of Trustees authorize $15,000 in payments to Tim Jackson Construction and $39,000 to Hill and Wilkinson General Contractors for pre-construction fees for Pierce, Mohawk, and Brentfield on December 7th? Are these already the chosen contractors?
Yes, we are working off of our bid process to put, we had to bring a architect on board to start the pre-planning process and then a general contractor on board to help with estimating for those projects. And so I'll let Mr. Pate talk about how that funding happens.
And so state law allows districts to pay for soft cost, architect, engineering fees related to bond-funded activities prior to the bond being passed or the bonds being issued. In the event that this bond does not pass, we would pay for those costs out of general fund dollars.
If Lake Highlands Junior High was simply expanded instead of scrapped for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, what would the difference in cost be in millions of dollars? And how many years would the difference buy, and or how much farther could we get down the road toward district-wide expansion of junior highs to the new middle school model?
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that.
I think it's referring to the decision to rebuild Lake Highlands Junior High versus expand or renovate and remodel. And if there was any difference in costs, and if that difference in costs could buy, and or how much farther could we get down the road toward district-wide expansion, the junior highs to the new middle school model.
I think the starting point there, Ms. Hayes, would be just to expand the discussions around the decision that Lake Highlands Junior High had reached its end of useful life and some of the reasons for that decision.
Yeah, the facility condition index for Lake Highlands Junior High was in the 40 percentile range with significant systems, boiler room, foundation, HVAC, all the systems that would have to be replaced in order for that building to continue to be occupied. Was part of the decision factor that we made in determining that it would be better for that community to have a new building rather than try to repair that existing building that's 70 years old. It's really at its end of life. I don't have actual numbers to share at this time.
We will take this question and be sure to make sure we answer it and add it to our FAQ as well on the bond information website. The next question is specifically, in what ways will JJ Pierce be expanded, if we want to share some of the potential projects included in that expansion.
Sure, and there's a great visual out on the JJ Pierce website. On any of our campuses that we have renovation or construction plan, we have a website attached link there that you can go see what the architects and the program planning committees are working on. For Pierce, it is additional classrooms on the northwest corner of that school. It's moving a gym that's currently in the middle of the building to be a part of the athletic wing and building the storm shelter that's required. And then building a cafeteria in the middle of the campus to bring cohesiveness to that campus, as well as expanding some of the southeast corner by the recently transformed library, adding some additional classroom space there, and actually 2 entrances. Pierce High School has the main entrance that sits catty corner on Coit Road, and that campus let us know that that entrance doesn't really work well for that campus for traffic flow and for a lot of the seniors that actually park on the north side of the campus. So that campus asked to have 2 entrances, a southern and a northern entrance. And so that's being built with administration space for that as well. So those are the big parts. The additional piece is renovation of their auditorium. That configuration of the auditorium has some sound and lighting issues. And so we will be working to correct those and bringing their black box over to the theater area where it currently sits separate from that part of the theater arts area.
And Ms. Hayes, can you just briefly touch on a couple of the additional Cte programs and opportunities we're going to be able to bring to Pierce as a result of that renovation?
They're updating their health science classroom area, and they're adding a construction classroom area to Pierce as well.
Next question, if the bond does not pass, will our tax rate eventually go down for the interest and sinking part?
Yes, eventually, if this bond did not pass and no future bonds passed, eventually the interest and sinking tax rate would decrease. But remember, the district's bonds are generally issued with a 25-year life. And so right now, the last scheduled bond payment on the most recently issued new money bonds is 2044.
But I'll also add on that, after the year and a half or however long process, it really was 2 years in the making of our community deciding to go out for a $750 million bond based on their determination of need, that we would immediately adjust and reissue the bond so that the tax rate would not go down. We would go out for an additional bond. So I think that's important, just based on the declaration of our community, based on their determination of need.
Next question, given the current credit rating and indebtedness in RISD, what is the maximum amount RISD is eligible to borrow at this time without raising the tax rate?
That is the $750 million that this bond is proposed for. And I'm looking. And I would just remind everyone that, the district will not be selling or issuing all $750 million at once, that the issuance of that debt will be spread out over, right now we expect it to be spread out over the 5 years. So, the district's outstanding debt will not immediately increase by $750 million.
Let's see, if bond 2026 is required in order to catch up the remaining feeder patterns for the new 6-7-8 middle school plan, what is the estimated total package in dollars of bond 2026?
Has not been determined yet. That will be determined through a bond steering committee as we start to plan for that in 2024.
Would the cost of the projects increase in the future if the bond were not to pass?
Would the projects increase?
Would the cost of the projects increase in the future if the bond were to not pass?
I don't know that we could predict that. That depends on the economy and the resources that are taken for that project.
I'm thinking inherent in that question is maybe the possibility, if because of the cost of inflation that we see year over year, might we project that the further down the road that the cost of the projects could or might increase? While hard to predict, could you project that? Could you project that?
Yes, Dr. Stone. I mean, my answer would be that to the extent that projects are delayed based on, historical inflation trends, that we would expect the cost of projects to increase over time to the extent they're delayed.
Well, and Ms. Hayes, can you talk to the facility conditions index? Because the other thing too about this is if the bond were not to pass, then what's the ramifications for not being behind on scheduled maintenance?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a great question because of the fact that the determination to rebuild, for example, the campuses that have just this incurring and growing cost in terms of system breakdowns and those kinds of things. That went into part of the decision, did it not?
Yes. And on the facility condition index, those condition indexes continue to grow, which means the building is continuing to deteriorate if those systems are not repaired and or replaced to keep the building maintenance at a even keel. So if you don't do anything to the buildings as they sit right now, all of our buildings will continue to deteriorate, and those that we identified as needing immediate needs at some point would become unoccupiable.
And the final question in the Q&A, and then I want to jump over to the chat, make sure we've covered all of them there. Is this a property tax increase, not a rate increase, a tax increase?
So as you said, the tax rate is not increasing. Whether or not an individual property taxpayer experiences a property tax bill or property tax levy increase depends on the changes in taxable appraised value as determined by the Dallas Central Appraisal District. So we cannot speak to individual property taxpayer situations on that.
Thank you, Ms.
Yeah, I would love, am I on mute? Sorry. No, I'd love Mr. Eager. You always give such clarity to our listeners regarding kind of this ballot language and what it means in terms of the tax increase. So love for you to add that on.
Sure. So in effect, it is the legislature, it has said that we have to put that on there. If any $1 of bond money goes out, it stays, that statement, you see it on the ballot. If we issued $1 and brought the rate down from 35 cents to a penny, the same amount, the same language would be on there. So no matter what we do, if we issue anything for any dollar amount of a bond, you're going to see that statement on there. And that's about as simple as I can make it.
There are a few additional questions in the chat that I would like to be sure that we cover that have been submitted. Just making sure, what growth is embedded in property values to maintain no changes to the tax rate?
And that is 2.5% for this tax year and 1% for, 2.5% for this year, 1% every year thereafter. And again, our historical property value growth rate year over year is 3.7%. And so let's see, how does that compare to historical growth rates? We've addressed that. If property values grow faster, I'm sorry, Melissa, I just started in.
No, you're fine.
If property values grow faster than anticipated, will the district maintain the tax rate and retire debt more quickly or cut the future property tax rates? So at least through leading into a 2026 bond and the issuance of all the debt for the 2021 bond, it would remain at 35 cents. Changes to the tax rate beyond that would be influenced by what was proposed and recommended by the Bond Steering Committee for 2026.
Okay, there's a couple more questions. How much cushion is embedded into the cost of projects to account for cost overruns and inflation?
And that is 10%.
And what is the district's track record for actual cost overruns on capital expenditures from the most recent bond offering?
And I will let Sandra address that.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any major cost overruns. We're still finishing projects, so that I guess is still to be determined for finalizing that, but not aware of any major ones. I know there's Mr. Pate, where I think the bond department is kind of finalizing what those project tallies are at this point.
Yes.
For residents, the continuation of some additional questions from the chat. For residents that live in the White Rock Elementary area, and it appeared that there was some significant increase, the floodplain issues, increase in costs. Also, there are rumors that the new athletic facilities incurred significant cost overruns. Is that correct?
So on the White Rock Elementary piece, FEMA changed their flood maps as we began to plan that project. And so they gave us a new updated FEMA map with a 500-year flood plain issuance. And so we had to go back to our Board of Trustees and add additional scope to that project because we had to put an underground retainage system in case there is a 500-year flood in that area. And then the same thing, there is not an overrun on the multipurpose activity centers. We changed the scope of those and added additional locker room space to meet the needs of our athletic programs that are continuing to grow at our high schools. And so that scope also changed from the original plan.
Okay, and I do see another question about the debt service rate eventually decrease if subsequent bonds did not pass. Would that be immediate or until all bonds have been paid off completely?
And so that would, let me see. It would change over time based on property value growth and the scheduled debt service payments if no future bonds ever passed. So it would be some immediate change. Well, yes, it would all be dependent on the scheduled debt service, any restructuring that was done to pay those, to shorten the life of the bonds and reduce our interest cost.
Thank you, Mr. Pate. I believe I've caught all of the questions in the chat, and I have not seen any additional questions added in the Q&A.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Heller, for your great monitoring of the questions. Thank you to the staff for the answers. We commit to any questions that we were not able to answer to be able to update those and get those back and added to our FAQ. The questions that were submitted tonight were extremely helpful to us for us to know what is out there in terms of the wonderings about Bond 2021. And we'll do our research and our homework to be able to get the answers to those added to our website. Please continue to follow www.rsd.org/bond 2021 for future updates. And Dr. Heller, why don't you close us out with any other forums, other opportunities to get answers to questions?
Yes, Dr. Stone, thank you. We do have 2 additional public information forums that we will be hosting. We will be hosting another face-to-face public forum on Tuesday, April 20th at 6 o'clock at our administration building, as well as we will also be hosting another virtual Zoom, just as we have this evening, on Wednesday, April 21st at 6 p.m. And that the information for those meetings is on the Bond 2021 website.
I just want to close out with an expression of gratitude to not only all of you who are viewing, all of you who will watch the recording of this forum, but also to all of the many, many community members who had a part in getting us to this point, either through our strategic plan and all of the projects that are going into this bond, but all of our community members who are part of our community steering committee who helped this to move forward to our Board of Trustees to go on the ballot on May 1st. And one last reminder, Dr. Heller, in terms of when early voting starts for our community.
Yes, ma'am. Early voting begins on Monday, April 29th, and April 19th. I had a little dyslexia there with my numbers. Monday, April 19th, early voting begins through Tuesday, April 27th, and Election Day is on Saturday, May 1st.
So join us all for voting, and we hope that you all stay safe and well. Thank you to our board members and everyone who was here tonight to be a part of providing information to our community. Thank you, and everyone be safe and well. Good night.